Chad Scott's been let go at Texas. Nicco Marchiol isn't in the portal yet. We think he'll get there. Jaheim White is already in the portal. They're all on a collision course for North Texas and Neal B.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? Welcome back in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host. Welcome back into Locked On West Virginia, where we're talking about the Mountaineers on the football side of things today, portal style. Obviously, guys, thank you so much for joining in as we dive into another fresh one. It's going to be fun. It's going to be real fun. That's right. Rich Rod obviously is on this episode as well, as he talked about the portal class the other day. What were the highlights of what Rich Rod said about this portal class? Not the portal class, sorry. The high school class and JUCO class. He had a lot to say. I think there's some hidden stuff in there we can kind of look at. Maybe not so hidden, that Rich Rod kind of pointed to and some things we can expect. So sounds like a fun one to me. Obviously, we have to start where we start. We'll talk about Rich Rod in the second segment. We're going to talk about Neal Brown first. Look, guys, in my opinion, if you look at Chad Scott, been released to Texas today. We've all been waiting for Nicco Marchiol to enter the portal. It would be a great shock if he didn't do that. I'm sure they're going to wait till the perfect situation forms, and then they're probably going to do a no contact and then jump in. It just seems like something they would do, although I have no knowledge into that necessarily. It just seems like something they would do. And Jaheim White's obviously going into the portal as well. So with that said, I think especially these two players, because of a couple factors, would be perfect at North Texas and what Neal Brown is trying to build. So let's jump straight into what I mean here. Obviously, we know Neal just officially hired as the head coach of North Texas, but that immediately would raise some natural questions, like if you're at North Texas person, you're going to say, okay, so which former West Virginia players are going to fit his system? Which players does he personally believe in the most? Did he show the most belief in at West Virginia? Who has existing relationships with him or any staff members? And, I think obviously these two are the two that you start with. We are not reporting that they're transferring to North Texas. We're just talking here. We're talking fit. We're talking history. We're talking relationships. We're talking the realistic reasons it could happen, right? So here are the actual reasons I think, anyways, Nicco would be a good fit first. We'll start with him. Number one, Neal always defended Nicco. He always defended his leadership. As a matter of fact, he was the same way with Garrett Green. He was the same with Jarrett Daniels, JT Daniels. Same thing with Daggy. All these guys, he was pretty defensive of, but Nicco very defensive of, and I think he was trying to protect him. He said Nicco was one of the hardest workers on the roster. He praised his in-game toughness numerous times. He emphasized Nicco's character and competitiveness and called him, quote, a guy you can win with. He always kind of blamed the supporting cast when Nicco didn't play well. One time, after a game, he said the wide receivers didn't separate. Another time, he said there was O-line injuries in the game that caused a lot of chaos for Nicco. Another time, he said the play calling had to be simplified due to the injuries, right? So that we had on the team at the time. So, there was always a reason. I went back and looked at a bunch of different press conferences after losses when Nicco played. Those were just some of the things that he said when Nicco questions came up. So I think this shows that Neal believes he can fix Nicco in a stable environment. Even though he wasn't recruiting runners only, he repeatedly said, dual threat makes life easier. We need quarterbacks who can extend plays, and Nicco does fit that mold. We didn't know that he had a foot injury this year at West Virginia. We found out later down the line, which raises its own questions about what we were doing. But either way, Nicco started off fairly hot, especially to Rodney Gallagher. Looked okay early in the season as a thrower, but that running portion of his game just was not there. That had been there previously to a much higher level than it was showing for us. So I think you have to look at this and say he's got to be able to get a little better in the running side of things due to that injury. And it would make perfect sense for him at North Texas. It matters for North Texas because North Texas needs a fresh identity. Their roster doesn't have an entrenched proven starter. I think the guy that they do have is going to follow his coach to Oklahoma State. So Nicco at North Texas equals probably immediate path to quarterback one in a group of 5 league where I think he would actually thrive. I do. Neal Brown is the head coach who has consistently backed him publicly. Why wouldn't he do it again at North Texas? It would be an indictment, I think, on Nicco if he didn't go there. To an extent, I don't think Nicco is going to have a ton of Power 4 opportunities breaking down his door, although I've been proven wrong before. Maybe he will have, and maybe I'm wrong. And I'm not trying to be too negative on Nicco. I realize he wasn't placed in a great position and all that. Like, it wasn't a great spot for him to be in this year as the starter. And I do believe that you could win with him, but he's not. And, I've seen enough from him now to say he's not going to raise your team up like Mendoza for Indiana the other day. Like, those kind of throws he just doesn't make. So I do think he's obviously the first thing you talk about when you think about Nicco, when you think about Neal, when you think about a marriage in North Texas. But not far behind that is absolutely Chad Scott, Jaheim White. They have a real relationship, right? And it's probably the biggest factor in all of this. So as of right now, we don't know unless it's been announced over the last hour or so. He's not been announced in North Texas, Chad Scott. Maybe Chad Scott has his eye on bigger things. But I do think an OC spot at North Texas would be a good start for him again, even though it's a little bit of a demotion. I don't know. An OC at a G5 is probably similar caliber to a running positional coach at Texas maybe, but I think the loyalty's just there for him, and I think they both know that they would win together at North Texas. I think they both feel that way. I would be surprised if he doesn't end up there, right? They've been together their entire coaching career. Now, maybe he has I don't know this, but maybe Chad Scott has some kind of other job lined up that's bigger, and I don't know, but you would think he's going to end up at North Texas. If he does, I think it opens up the door for Jaheim White. Now, a lot of people will say Jaheim White should probably go P4, but I don't know. My biggest thing from Jahiem is this. Do I think he's a P4 talent? There's no question. Absolutely he is. But he's almost 3 years and 2 injuries away from his last great production, right? So he's a bit of damaged goods and may not be able to command the market on what he thinks he should, right? So why not take your junior year to prove yourself back at the G5 level, go rush for a boatload of yards like we all know you can in West Virginia, or stay at West Virginia and try to beat everybody out. One of those two. Because you already know the system. You're probably going to get Matt Moore. Somebody mentioned in the comments. You would imagine Matt Moore is probably coming. I mean, that's a hell of a G5 staff. Chad Scott, Matt Moore. I mean, you were able to do 500 and a little bit over ball at the Power 4 with that staff. That's more than adequate for the group of 5 at North Texas with Matt Moore, Chad Scott. I don't think Vic Koenig is going to go there. He was hired as a DC recently, I think, somewhere else. But yeah, so Chad Scott always believed Jaheim White was special. He called him explosive, one of the most naturally gifted running backs I've ever coached. I went back and looked up several clips of Chad Scott talking about Jahiem. There are many where he talked about he openly pushed for him to get more touches early in his freshman year. He said Jaheim's got bursts and home run ability that is rare. And Chad Scott was the running backs coach for Jaheim White during his best season. He trusted him in big moments. He openly talked about loving the running back room under Chad Scott, did Jaheim White. So both should be now available, and why wouldn't reuniting under Neal Brown be the place to go? Texas let Chad Scott go. Neal needs staff at North Texas. Scott is loyal. He's available. He's obviously proven as one of the best running back coaches in the country. Hell, I wouldn't mind having him back at West Virginia for a lot of reasons. So obviously, if I'm Rich Rodriguez, I'm trying to get him for something. I don't know. I'll find a position for you. Chad Scott's, in my opinion, I still think he has head coaching ability. I do believe that about him. I really do. I think Chad Scott's going to be a good coach someday. I don't think him being dismissed from Texas is necessarily anything he did wrong at Texas. I mean, I just think that maybe he wanted to go join Neal, and they just made it look like they dismissed him instead of him leaving them. That's probably my best guess here. So, it obviously matters for Texas because Jaheim White is perfect for them. Oh my God, he would instantly be one of the best players in the entire conference, and they could feature him instantly. So some of that cap money, if you want to use it to get a guy as good as Jaheim White, do it, and it would extend his career. It would showcase him and all that. Now, there is the injury factor for both players, right? Nicco's battled injuries. He's had up and down seasons, especially this season, but he does have the tools to put it together. Jaheim White's best year was early in his career. Since then, injuries and some inconsistency has kind of hurt him. Also, some inconsistency at West Virginia, obviously, changing coaches. So North Texas makes sense for both. It's lower physical toll than the Big 12. It's a familiar system. There's immediate opportunity to start, and you would have very little competition at that level, although there are really good players at that level. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that wouldn't be the case. But overall, I think this is a good thing for both sides. Would like to see it happen just from a West Virginia standpoint. It would be interesting to see how they do all together. And most likely, unless they change the rule, which they might with G5, you'll probably see them pushing for a playoff spot in the next couple of years again under Neal, maybe sooner than later. It's that program's in a good place compared to where Neal was when he got to West Virginia, and that's under Dana. So I think there's a lot to like about it. I would love to see all succeed. I think we all are kind of rooting for everybody involved there, even Neal. I don't feel like Neal. I don't harbor any hatred for him other than I feel like the brand was damaged, obviously, under him. But other than that, I don't think it really – I don't think there's really a lot to dislike about him. There's a lot of West Virginia people that do. I'm not one of them. So just my overall thoughts on it, guys. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this one. I'm curious. I'm curious how you feel, if you agree and all that. But by the way, the Everydayer Club, I've been meaning to tell you guys more about this. I actually have it in the description box this time. So the Everydayer Club, if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio. You can get access to our members-only Discord and more, which is all built for our most loyal fans. So if you want to click, I'll give you guys the link in the chat right now. So here's the link here. If you want to be part of the Everydayer Club, there's the link in the chat. I'll also put it in the description box after the video, or not the description box, it's already there, in the comment box after the video as well. So join the Everydayer Club, guys. It means a lot to me. You guys always ask how you can help me out. This is one way to do it. And all that. So let's go to break. Coming back, we'll definitely talk about Rich Rodriguez and what he had to say, some of the highlights of what he said about this recruiting class. I've been meaning to do this video for a couple of days, but I had to go and try to find the audio, try to find the video, try to listen to it. It's almost impossible to find. So we'll come back here. We'll talk about it next. This episode of Locked On West Virginia going to be brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now with FanDuel, guys, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different, right? That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. Receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines, which adjust instantly. You can bet your next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your live NFL bets all season long with FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. All right, West Virginia basketball versus Ohio State this week. Let's see. On FanDuel right now, I'm assuming it's probably let's see. It's looking like it is. I'm waiting for it to load here. All right. Looks like for now, West Virginia plus 6.5 for this game on FanDuel. So Ohio State is favored by 6.5 points this weekend on FanDuel. So we'll see how that game plays out. Obviously, we're going to react to that game here any day now, as soon as I can get a hold of Locked On Buckeyes. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting game this week. See how West Virginia does. All right. Rich Rodriguez obviously talked about a lot of things over this past week, but specifically when it comes to this recruiting class, I've got a bunch of bullet points that I wrote down as I listened and studied and looked, and I think I pieced together most of everything he said about that the class and a couple players in it. So he said every position needed help after last season. The staff was really disappointed with the year overall, but not discouraged. And he said he believes the problems can be fixed starting with personnel. Last year, they were late on the high school JUCO cycle, so they were forced to go heavy. And he said they had more one-year players than he ever wants to have again, which I totally understand, which is what we're dealing with now with 30 seniors, right? So now that the staff have been here for a year, they don't need to rely on the portal as much, which is a big deal, obviously. It's a good thing for West Virginia that you don't have to. So he said they still will use the portal, but not nearly as much as last year's level, right? Like last year's level was kind of an abnormality as far as the amount of players we got. So that means the priority is going to start up front on the offensive and defensive lines. He said he plans to get a handful and target a handful of grown men in the portal in January. And he's excited about that, which I am too. I've said it multiple times this week, but West Virginia is going to have anywhere between, let's just put it at between 18 to 22 or 23 million, counting the cap and what they have outside the cap. We estimate they might have outside the cap. It could be more or less. So that means you're going to have anywhere from 18 to $22 million to spend on potentially 15 or 16 guys, right? So that's exciting. That means you're going to be spending a lot of money on really good players, at least you would hope. Like Mr. Joseph at quarterback at Old Dominion is a guy that we keep on hearing a lot about, right? So how much is he going to cost? Can you afford him? There was just a list released right before I came on here, the top 10 NIL deals for quarterbacks or players. Probably, well, it's players, but quarterbacks all have the biggest deals. Arch Manning, $6.5 million NIL deal with Texas this past year. Insanity, right? You look at a guy like Baron Morton at Texas Tech, he's at 1.7. So, and he was like 20th on the list. So West Virginia, if you're going to get a top 20 quarterback, you're going to have to spend at least $2 million, most likely. Does that mean this kid Joseph from Old Dominion will command that much money? I don't know. I mean, you would hope not, but at the end of the day, if you want an elite quarterback, you're going to have to pay for it, which means you might have to subtract from a place that you feel like you really need to, fill. I don't know how. I don't know. I think it does depend on how much money you have overall. Something tells me, though, they were in the sweepstakes for Chris Henry, and we know he got a similar figure to go to Ohio State. So if that's the case, if West Virginia was in it for Chris Henry, I can't see him not being in it for one of the big-time quarterbacks this offseason. We'll see. Maybe Rich Rod doesn't feel like it's worth spending the money for a big-time quarterback right now, considering we may not be in contention shape next year as a team. But I do think it's interesting. If you bring in 12 to 15 elite guys or really good guys, I don't mean to say elite. That's probably not a fair thing to say. Really good players or good players, starters. Is that enough for this team to flip? I don't know. I think it's enough to be like a Houston this year, maybe where you're like 8 or 9 wins, maybe. And that's like really optimistic, for year 2 based on this huge high school class we just had. Now, not this coming year, but the year after this year, all bets are off. As long as we trend up, yeah, I can see us being in a Texas Tech type position by year 3. We better be, because college football is coming to its head-on collision. It's coming, and the teams that are good are going to be the ones that people are looking to first. I do believe that. On the field will matter. Even people say that don't matter. Brands are going to matter first, but how do you get a good brand? By winning. Look at Texas Tech's brand in the span of one season, one off season of really good spending and a really good team, which is obvious to the eye that they're a top 5 team, and they're treated as a pretty big brand. Even if they lost their conference championship game, they were still going to be in the playoff, at least I think. Could West Virginia put themselves in that position? Probably never. I don't know. It's just the fact that we're West Virginia. It makes me feel like probably not. But, I do wonder about it sometimes. All right, I'm off track, but I still think that was fun to talk about. So, Rich Rod plans to get and the line that took me through all that was Rich Rod plans to get a handful of grown men in the portal in January. I wasn't even supposed to go into that tangent. He said they signed some high potential future all-conference linemen in this class. He said they signed really athletic quarterbacks and that they needed a bunch of wide receivers who can run, and they got them. Also, he said they added a couple of tight ends, but they need more at that position. And he said they addressed the defensive line a little bit. More additions are still to come, as well as signed several linebackers. Now, building through high school, he has a couple of philosophies on this that I like, especially number one is if the talent's equal, they prefer the guy with 4 years over the guy with 1 year. But if the older guy's more clearly better, they'll take him over that guy. So it's all about who the best player is. And if everything's even, you take the guy with the most years. It's a pretty simple philosophy. The ideal ratio is 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, freshmen and JUCO players to portal players. I like that too. I would probably lean 3-to-1 if you can get it. Listen, if you could get yourself in a position where you only needed 5 or 6 portal guys, I think that would be ideal even. I really do. If you can, this football is never going to change. The longer you can have players on your team, the better you're going to be, period. I don't care how crappy guys are when they get there. You can turn some bad players into good players by the time they leave. Guys like Reed Williams, right? You ever seen a picture of Reed Williams when he got to West Virginia? He looked like he should have been an FCS player. Like what he looked like when he was in the Sugar Bowl is nothing what he looked like whenever he was a freshman. Just go look it up sometime. So anyways, 2-to-1 ratio, I think is where you really want to be. I think it is the ratio. We will find out. Okay. So portal players are more expensive, especially instant plug and play guys. But he said high school guys cost less because they're unproven. So I get that too. It makes sense for sure. It's basically, can you help now or can you help later? And what's that going to cost me? He said no promises to recruits that they'll immediately start, which would be unfair. He said they do not recruit backups or developmental guys only. He said coaches are instructed to recruit equal or better than the current roster, which is pretty crazy. So that means the better the roster gets, the more Hopefully you can keep on refining that. You need a competitive environment only. You didn't have enough competition last year. You need a competitive environment daily, is what he said. Didn't have enough competition last year. He said injuries killed competition with three guys. When three guys get hurt, there's no real battle for playing time, which makes a ton of sense. Then he talked about a couple of players in Kevin Brown and Matt Sieg. On Kevin Brown, he said he was a no-brainer. He was originally committed to Penn State. He came up to West Virginia's camp and actually worked out, which is rare for players of his caliber. He said the staff was blown away that he's a monster and there's everything they possibly could have hoped for. So Penn State had their coaching shakeup. West Virginia got the opening, and he said his visit was not good. It was great. He said he loves his dad and his family, and he fits West Virginia perfectly. And he described it as everything you want in a football player. That's Kevin Brown. If that don't get you excited, nothing will, right? Kevin Brown is that guy. He's that dude. He's that starting right, whatever, starting left, whatever you want him to be next year. He's going to be in the rotation, and I'm excited about it, man. I can't wait to see him run out as a Mountaineer fan. Be one of the first jerseys I get. Matt Sieg, originally also committed to Penn State. Thank you, Penn State. You know, in Western PA, Sieg was he was the talk of the whole state, according to Rich Rod. He's a dynamic player who can play multiple positions. And West Virginia didn't think they were truly in the race until Penn State changes created a crack in the armor for them. He said Sieg sees an opportunity to play safety at West Virginia, but the staff told him it could also help on offense. West Virginia made a really hard late run at him and landed him. And he said, Coach says fans will love watching him. He's a dynamic and fun player. He also talked about recruiting players who can play two ways. He said they purposely signed multiple players who could play two ways, which is interesting. The future roster size limits mean everything is looked at and judged differently now, especially versatility being one of the most crucial things. Curtis Jones played both ways this year out of necessity. He said Noah Tischendorf could play fullback and tight end. Several other recruits can play running back, slide outside wide receiver and defense. So you're looking at even more two-way players coming in. Maybe Malachi Thompson or Xavier Anderson as tight ends that can do a little bit of both. What about dual threat quarterbacks? Well, not a requirement, he said, but if a quarterback is an elite thrower and accurate, that works. But dual threat ability is preferred. And he said the quarterbacks they signed are all runners and throwers, which is true. We've gone over them all. After the break, guys, we're going to jump into what Rich Rod said about exit meetings with players. How have they been treating that, and what have they been saying to them? Next. And this one's going to be brought to you by our friends at Rougiette, guys. Are you guys Rougiette ready? Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, and life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time when you're in the middle doing your thing, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiette Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support the brain and the body so you can feel present, competent, and ready when the moment matters. And it matters. Rougiette combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in one mint that dissolves under your tongue so it does absorb fast. The science behind Rougiette Ready stands out. 3 clinically proven ingredients in one formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. You connect with a board-certified doctor online and everything ships discreetly to your door. It's easy to understand why 150,000 men have already made that switch. Most men are about ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, competent, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about the next step, now's the time. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege, where that's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order. For a limited time, you can be Rougiette ready, feel present, feel confident, and feel ready. All right, we're back here, Locked On West Virginia in segment 3. Thank you guys so much for joining in with us as we dive into a couple of things to end the show. Thank you so much for being here, like I said. One more quick reminder on what we were just talking about with the Everydayer Club. If you never miss an episode, please make it official. Join the Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to members-only Discord, and that's all for your most loyal fans. So click the link in the chat or in the description box. It's lockedonpodcast.com/Everydayer Club. And we would really appreciate that, guys, so you can be a part of the Discord as well. Okay, so Rich Rod talking about these exit meetings with current players. He said the staff is brutally honest, and they're not going to string players along. Players are told clearly whether they have a spot or not. A handful of players will be called to task, and that means basically like when you take somebody to task, that means it's a wake up moment for you, right? So they must show, and basically they must show in the next couple of months they belong. And if they're not disciplined, they may be pushed out. But most aren't problems, but a few are up against it. So they're being really honest with these guys right now, which means like this is where you're at, right? This is where we think you could go here, or if you don't think this is right for you, here's the door, basically. And I'm sure with a couple of these guys, it's probably not really hard to have that conversation. You're just ready to get it over with, probably ready to get them out the door. I'm sure there are a couple guys where it's not even a question. You're out the door. And then there are a couple guys where it's like, man, I hope they don't leave out the door. Guys like, maybe you would have said Jaheim White, but, I would say more along the lines of guys like, well, I would probably start with, you got to start with probably Cam Vaughn, even though there was a lot of negativity around that. The one play, I still don't agree with all that. I don't agree with letting it go slide either. If you want to say he's up against it for that, sure. But like people were saying he's not hard edged, that he doesn't deserve to be back. You had media calling him out literally on social media. And I get that. It's okay to say that's not okay. But it was people going the extra mile saying he doesn't need to be back. He's not hard edged. I can't believe we're paying him. All these extra things. It's just way too in the moment. Emotional reactions. And a lot of these people have no emotional maturity. So, but anyways, he's probably one of the top two. Obviously, Curtis Jones. You got to keep Curtis Jones. You got to keep Aiden Woods. You've got to keep Nick Cray, probably Lennon Livingston. The regular suspects. I think I did a list the other day, right around 30 guys you want to keep if you can, right? In my opinion, on this roster. And maybe you got to keep a few more. I was being pretty harsh with the list that I did. Because if you're only going to get 15 guys out of the portal, well, do the math. If you're only keeping 30 on the roster, you brought in 50 guys from high school, that's 80, and you can have 105. Well, that leaves 25 spots rather than 15. So, because they're going to go get 15 guys in the portal. Maybe they go get 25 instead and 15, but I doubt it. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get up into the higher than 15. We'll see what they do. If they can stick to that number, though, that's a good number. I will say you don't want to have to replace a bunch of guys for next year. And there's a lot of really good players out there too. I'm really curious. I'm so curious as to who they're going to go after. There's all kinds, like the Syracuse linebacker that just went in 160 tackles the last 2 years or whatever it is, like just a really good player for them. Like there's a ton of good players out there. I'm curious to see what kind of player we're going after. I think our fan base collectively will probably sigh a sigh of relief if we actually bring in some decent P4 players this time instead of, because I can just see it now. So we go after an FCS player or something, people are going to lose their minds. I can see it. Thanks for joining in, guys. Like the video, share if you're new around here, subscribe if you're new around here. And thank you so much for coming in. We'll try to be back later. I have a birthday party to go to for my nephew. It's going to make it tricky for me tonight. May not be able to do 2 episodes today unless it's late. So we'll play it by ear on that one. wanted to get this one in first, and we will talk to you guys a little later. Thanks for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen. Make sure you check out Locked On Big 12 next, as we always love to say. Drake Toll killing it, as always, over there, and deservingly so. But like we said, make sure you're checking us out, too, here in Locked On West Virginia. And we'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to cue those country roads. We'll see you later.